Hello, we're going to talk some about distributive property today. But before we talk about distributive property, let's talk about Chick-fil-A. Let's say that I took 3 students with me to Chick-fil-A and I ordered each of them a number 1. Once the food arrived, I would need to take that food and distribute the food from the tray to each student. And we know, based on Chick-fil-A combo number 1, student number 1 would get a drink, a fry, and a sandwich. Student 2 would get a drink, a fry, and a sandwich. And student 3 would get a drink, a fry, and a sandwich. That is what when we think of distributing, that's often what we think about, is passing things out or handing them to people, handing things out. But this also works with numbers. So let's take a look at how this looks with numbers. So if I have a problem, 3 parentheses 4 plus 6, we're going to start because we know with PEMDAS, we start with our parentheses. So we'll start with our parentheses, and 4 plus 6 we know equals 10. So now we have 3 times 10 left over, and 3 times 10 is 30. Now I want you to remember that 30 as we look at this a little differently. Okay, so keep that 30 in your head. So here we have the exact same problem again, but this time we're going to look at this from a standpoint of distributing. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, well, if I have this 3 and I know that the parentheses mean to multiply, I'm going to take this 3 and I'm going to multiply it by this 4. But if I multiply 3 by this 4, I also must multiply this 3 by 6. So what that gives us then is 3 times 4, which I have here. We keep our plus sign, that comes next, and then 3 times 6. So that comes next. We know that 3 times 4 is 12, and then we know that 3 times 6 is 18. So now we're left with 12 plus 18. And what do you know? 12 plus 18, again, equals 30. So either way that you solve this, you're going to get the same answer. Well, why is this important? This is important with algebra. We'll take a look at that first. But before we look at algebra, here's how I remember distributing. Here's a visual for you. When you visit your grandparents and you must say goodbye, do you hug your grandma goodbye but not your grandpa? Well, of course not. If you hug one of them goodbye, you will hug the other one goodbye as well. And I remember this best with distributive property because if I multiply the first number outside of the parentheses with the number inside of the parentheses, then I must do the same with the second number. It's just fair. So let's now look at distributing with algebra. So I say algebra now because we have a variable x here, and we know that, again, whatever I do with this 3 to the x, I'm also going to do with the 3 and the 6. The reason the first way we solved this wouldn't work in this particular problem is because we can't really add x plus 6. Those are unlike terms. So we have to distribute here. So again, we're going to take this 3 and we're going to multiply it by x. And then again, because we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, we're also going to take this 3 and multiply it by 6. So that gives us 3 times x plus 3 times 6. Why am I using dots here? Well, I'm using dots here because if I used x's, this would be 3xx plus 3x6, and that just gets really confusing. So from this point forward, it really becomes best to use these dots for a multiplying symbol rather than the x that we're used to using. All right, so now we're going to take and we're going to do our 3 times x. So 3 times x gives us 3x because we can't combine those any further. And then 3 times 6 gives us 18. So we're left with 3x plus 18. I know that I'm done now because I cannot combine 3x with 18. This has a variable and this is a constant. It does not have a variable, so I cannot put those two together. So actually my final answer is right here, 3x plus 18. All right, so I'd like you to do some practice. Here's 3 problems. I would suggest for you to pause this video now and take a moment or two to solve these 3 problems out on paper. Yes, I said on paper. All right, so hopefully you've had some time there. All right, so here are our answers. 3x plus 15 for the first one. This one I added, you'll see I added a coefficient in front of your variable here, but it's the same thing. 4 times 2x would give us 8x, and then 4 times 5 would give us 20. This one we have 6 times x would give us 6x, and 6 plus 6 would give us 36. All right, well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.